gotta tell somebody.
This is the best thing I've ever seen.
Let's talk about that.
You need this. Listen to this.
Memorable and exciting.
Well, then be less boring.
I'm going to tell everyone. Wait here.
Quite a remarkable, Big Daddy.
Remarkable.
Welcome to Remarkable, a podcast for B2B marketers that deconstructs the most iconic moments in film, television, pop culture, and advertising for a single purpose: to give you, the B2B marketer, the same storytelling techniques that the pros use. In each episode, you will learn techniques from Hollywood, Pixar, Marvel, and beyond, from Spielberg's hands to yours, bringing remarkable content ideas to you every single week. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. This is Remarkable. This week, we're talking about marketing lessons from the new look with the help of our special guest who is leading Customer Advocacy and Executive Programs at DBT Labs. Hrishi, how are you?
I'm doing great, Ian. Thanks for asking. How are you?
Oh, I'm excited to have you on the show. We're going to chat the new look. We're going to chat some of the cool stuff that you're doing from content and exec programs and everything in between. First question, why the heck did you pick the new look to talk about today?
Yeah, so for those who have not watched the show, the new look is a stylish, character-driven historical drama that weaves fashion, politics, and personal legacy into a compelling narrative set against the backdrop of Nazi-occupied Paris post-World War II.
Parisian couture would influence how thousands of ordinary women dream and live.
For me, the story strongly resonated on multiple levels, both personally and professionally. There were elements that directly connected to my own work and experiences. At its core, the story is about strong family bonds and how Christian Dior's relationship with his sister and mother deeply influenced his creative journey and innovative approach to his work. I started my career as an engineer, and my sister was a big reason, a strong influence for me to switch to marketing. Also, a core part of my job is building trusted relationships with my customers, something I credit to my mother, who has always been the cornerstone of our family when it comes to fostering meaningful connections. So yeah, coming back to the show, the new look highlights Dior's remarkable innovation and artistic vision but also reflects something more intimate and human. Also, what stood out to me was his journey as a gay man, navigating in a conservative era and society, and the powerful theme of self-discovery. Dior's story is one of struggle, resilience, and grit. For me, personally, as an immigrant, brown, gay man who lived half his life in India, and again, India in the 80s and 90s was very conservative, right? So I moved to the US here as an engineer. But eventually, I found my passion in marketing. So this story really hit that bull's eye for me. It was about, as I said, strength, struggle, resilience, and grit. And lastly, despite the challenges Dior faced, he consistently led with empathy and compassion, which I found truly moving. The balance of strength and sensitivity is what made this story, the new look, particularly meaningful to me. Being empathetic is important as a human being. We all have to always lead with empathy. But especially if you are a customer-facing professional, it is key to your success. So, I saw this show, and there have been times when I have gone back and watched certain episodes. It's been so impactful. I think it's a very beautifully created show.
I love that. That's amazing. And I love, your personal story as part of it as well. And flash forward to your current role. Tell us a little bit about it and how you think about customer advocacy and executive programs at DBT Labs.
Yeah, so DBT Labs is a leading software company that helps data teams transform, model, and document data within modern cloud data warehouses. Really, just to give a little bit more intel on the product and on the platform, it really enables, as I said, data teams to write modular SQL to define data transformations, test and document their data, version control, run models on different data warehousing, cloud data warehouse platforms, and maintain lineage, right? It brings both software and analytics engineering best practices, enabling faster, more reliable, and more collaborative data pipelines. So that's really about DPT Labs. My role, I joined DPT Labs back in August of 2024. So it's really about eight months. And I was brought in to lead their customer advocacy and executive programs. And what really it means is, from the customer advocacy point, I really work with our most innovative customers across the globe and really identify stories where the customers have seen success with the DBT platform, and then find ways to amplify those stories across our marketing channels, right? And marketing channels, a big part of it is customer case studies, any digital content, case studies, blogs, podcasts, customer film, video testimonials, speaking engagement, working with customers for our flagship event, Coalesce, which is coming up here in October, from October 13th to 16th in Vegas, in-person events, summits like Snowflake Summit and Databricks Summit, also through PR and media, getting customers to speak with our media partners, doing press releases. So again, truly amplifying that customer story across different channels and programs to highlight our customers' brand, their success, and their thought leadership. And then the executive programs aspect of my role includes, I run our customer advisory board, where we bring our top 10 to 15 customers in a closed room, invite-only closed room setting. And really we have those strategic discussions, understanding their business goals, and also they're getting their feedback and insights to drive our product direction. So Customer Advisory Board is one of the programs. I had an executive summit at our flagship event, and I recently am launching our executive sponsorship program, and I'll talk about it. Yeah, I know there's a question you have, so I'm happy to share more about it here in a few minutes as well.
Amazing. Meredith, what the heck is the new look?
So to add to what Hrishi already shared, the new look explores the fashion world around World War II through the rise of Christian Dior, who he had already mentioned. But the term new look actually comes from Dior's 1947 collection, which really sort of emphasizes feminine silhouette.
That is Meredith O'Neill, our amazing producer extraordinaire.
So he really emphasized this fitted waist and full skirt, which was sort of counter to wartime restrictions, where fabric was rationed. So you literally could not make a full skirt. There wasn't enough material to go around. But the show is based on real events, which is super cool. And it follows Dior, who's played by Ben Mendelsohn, along with other designers of the time. So specifically Coco Chanel, who's played by Juliette Binoche, and Lucien Lelong, played by John Malkovich.
Christian Dior ruined French couture, and I'm coming back to save it.
So it has like amazing cast, and it explores how they survived the war, both personally and professionally. And Hrishi, as you mentioned, it covers the story of Dior's sister, Catherine, played by Maisie Williams, who was a French resistance fighter and who Dior celebrated by making a perfume after her called Miss Dior.
I am honored to meet you, Miss Dior.
So I thought that was super cool that it shows her storyline as well. But the show creator Todd Kessler said, it's a story that hasn't been told. Monsieur Dior's personal story inspired people that it was okay to dream once more. And it inspires me that he did it through creation, that creation is survival.
For those of us who lived through the chaos of war, creation was survival.
And so I thought that was an interesting marketing tie. But this is a show that's so rich in detail that an intense amount of care and consideration went into the costuming as well as the set design, to the point where you could say that each play a character in the show. The most interesting detail I read about has to do with recreating original Dior dresses from the 1950s. Costume designer Karen Mueller-Serow had the dresses in the archives X-rayed, she said, from A to Z to see how they were made and recreate them in that way. Dior used incredible structures inside his dresses. They were sculptures, really, she said.
People need to feel again. They need to dream again. They need to live again. We can create a new world for them.
So when it came to her process, Karen Mueller-Serow started with the script, referencing photos and books from the period. She then storyboarded each scene and created mood boards. She said, I wanted to be as historically correct as possible. We worked as much as possible to be identical to the originals. A lot was done with Dior. When we were sourcing fabrics, they even had some of the fabrics we needed. So one of the other interesting details about costume design is that they wanted the clothes to look not new. So they had a textile artist who was breaking the costumes down. So they were literally like wearing them down in the right places, in the shoulders and the knees. They made the collars feel a little lived in. So they really wanted the storyline and everything to feel real, to feel lived in. Todd Kessler, the creator, filmed the scenes at many of the actual locations as well. And he dressed them up to look period correct. Not he, but the production designer. And so there's a scene where Coco Chanel is in a restaurant eating with Nazi officials. And that's in this restaurant called Maxim's, which is a real restaurant. And it's known to have been the preferred meeting spot for German military leaders. So they're really going for authenticity here. And for other key locations, the production designer, whose name is Anne Siebel, she had to basically create from scratch, like Dior's atelier or his workshop, Chanel's apartment at the Hotel Ritz. She said it was quite a job, but I love building sets. The lucky part, though, is that there were lots of pictures and reference points for these locations. So she had those to sort of look back on and reference. So if I were to look at all of this and take lessons from it when it comes to content and marketing, I would say attention to detail is really everything. I think it's cool when you can leave sort of Easter eggs or little points that if someone is looking close enough, like if you have like these mega fans of your brand, of your content, if they're looking close enough, they'll notice the finer details and find surprise and delight in them. In this, like costuming and like dress is basically a character and it's super powerful. So if you can do more with the way people are dressed in your content, even better. Make the world of your storytelling feel lived in and broken in. Tell the untold story, like the story of Christian Dior, and get inspired by history, I would say are sort of my lessons. But I'm wondering, Hrishi, if you saw other lessons to take out of the show.
Yeah, that's such well put together, Meredith. Awesome.
Thank you.
You know what? Really, for me, there were 3 marketing lessons that I truly gleaned from the show. And the first was, think about it, right? What is marketing? Marketing is all about storytelling. I joined marketing because I loved storytelling. I didn't know I was a storyteller until people told me this, oh, you're a storyteller. I'm like, yeah, I love storytelling, right? It's because if you think about it, storytelling truly impacts people's hearts and mind. It emotionally connects your product and your services to your audience. And that's exactly what Dior has done with his fashion. Like the perfume story you shared earlier, right? It's inspired by his sister. Like a lot of his design, of his costumes, of his art is all comes inspired from his mother. So he truly shows us how storytelling can drive the fashion industry. Or he started his fashion through the art of storytelling. Also thinking outside the box.
Shujo, what do you desire?
To design the most beautiful women's clothing that ever existed.
If you saw the show, he's constantly innovating. He's constantly thinking outside the box. And as a customer marketer, we have to be creative in identifying and securing the right stories, and then finding innovative ways to amplify those stories. If you keep amplifying different stories also in similar ways, at some point it is going to fall flat. So it's always, how can I be innovative with these stories, right? So again, and then of course, thought leadership, right? It's storytelling or thinking outside the box, being creative to showcase the thought leadership of your customers, their brand. Because one thing is you do not want to sound repetitive. And B, it's very important that if you're innovative, only if you produce something new, your audience are going to be engaged. So that is very key. And final, as you mentioned, Meredith, right? The thing I loved the most about that show was how authentic it was, as you mentioned, right? Like shooting in the same locations and really using, like, it was very close to the real characters. So being authentic and creating this personalized experiences was a big takeaway for me from that show. If you recall I think it was the last episode or the episode before that, where Dior decides that he's not going to have a huge fashion show, he's not going to have hundreds of designs, he's going to create it in a very small space, a very personalized experience, which never before any designer had done. So I guess being authentic and creating these personalized experiences was a third lesson that I took away from that show.
So did you know when you were watching it, like walk me through like your watching experience. Did you know any of that stuff ahead of time? How well did you know your story? I guess starting out, like, did you know this stuff or not, I guess?
I absolutely knew nothing about Dior's story.
Oh, funny. Okay.
Yeah. I was just browsing for a new show and it was a new look. And of course, I love fashion. And I'm like, okay, I want to watch the show. And within the first 15 minutes or 20 minutes, I was glued. I was committed to it. So, yep, I didn't know what this, I only knew it was post-World War era too, post-World War II era, and it was around fashion. But I was just completely blown away.
So then as you were watching it, you mentioned authenticity being an important part, but did you know it was authentic when you were watching it, or did you sort of like after you were watching it, Google it and figure that stuff out?
Not after. While I was watching it, I used to pull Wikipedia and read about it. Like, if they mention something, I'm like, did this really happen? And I would pause it and I would go back and refer to it. So yeah, I was, as I said, I was blown away with its authenticity.
Yeah. So, and the reason why I ask is like the authenticity piece is so cool. Like the story has to be great first, right? And then once you find out that it's authentic, you're like, oh my gosh, this is even better, right? It's even better than I thought, and makes you remember it more, I'm sure, and allows you to do that sort of research. But yeah, it's just interesting that, to give an example of a totally different show. I don't know if you ever watched The Queen's Gambit.
I did.
But
chess show, right?
What's up?
The show, it's show about the chess, right? She's a chess.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great show.
But the whole time, it feels so real. And then you Google it and it's actually a totally made up story. And it's actually even maybe even a little disappointing, just that it's made up because you're like, this is such a cool story. But anyways, the reason why I mention that is because when you have that moment where you're like, oh, this couldn't possibly be real, and then you Google it and it is real, it just it makes it all feel so much cooler. I think this is why we love biopics, right? Is like, we love this type of stuff because we love real stories, but also we want them portrayed with that, that level of authenticity, and we especially, and then and if we do know the story, then we take umbrage and like, oh, well, they put an extra sister in there and they should have never had that, stuff like that. But clearly they went to the nines with everything with this show.
It's all the power of storytelling, right? As I mentioned earlier, right? And even if you think in terms of today's, in terms of B2B, right? Customers love to hear how other customers are doing, how they are using your platform, right? That's where storytelling comes in powerful. And I always say that what makes a kick-ass story is it has to be data-driven and there has to be some human element to it. And now that's your recipe of a powerful story.
You mentioned how important it is thinking outside the box, being creative, and how important that is, and obviously a key part to your story. And what strikes me with stories like this all the time is that, and it will be this way for us right now in this moment in time, someday, where you go, oh my goodness, I can't believe they hadn't figured out X. I can't believe they hadn't figured out whatever yet. And part of that is just so exciting, to look back in the day, and you kind of feel like, you feel so holy, you're like, well, I know the future and they don't, and they're trying to figure this thing out. But yeah, I just wonder if, I wonder if we looked at customer stories, a little bit more that way, to really, really layer on the scene setting, the place and time of the decision making, rather than just the sort of objective key results. Because I think that's what these stories do so well, and this story particularly, is that the setting is just as important, if not more important than anything else. And if you're making a decision on what software to buy, in 2019, that's a far different decision than in 2021. You know what I mean? Like
very different.
Who is in the, or than today. And so, yeah, I feel like we don't always do the best job of doing the scene setting for like the circumstances that are going on around either the world or the company or the industry or anything like that.
No, I completely agree with you. I mean, as I said, like to tell a good story, you have to have a strong strategy. To have the right setting, it is so important. You have got to know your audience. So yeah, just having to build a powerful story, you have to first build a strategy around that story. Absolutely.
Well, and I think where I'm getting at with this is, in order to be outside of the box and to think outside of the box, you need to sort of find some inspiration, et cetera. But to tell a story about someone thinking outside the box, you need to do a really good job of showing the box, right? Like, why were there constraints set on this person at this moment in time? Like, what is going on? What is this box that is holding not just them inside of it, but everyone else who is around them, thinking of only that the world is only, doing things in a certain way, and how they were able to sort of like escape the box. Because if you just tell the story of them, hey, this is this like Picasso. If you're like, oh, you could just look at Picasso's artwork and be like, yeah, multi clocks and all this sort of stuff. This is crazy. This is like super unique artwork. But to me, in today's day and age, that doesn't look crazy because I grew up seeing Picasso. So that's not that crazy. But if you go back to his contemporaries and all the people that were doing that and show, oh, this is how you do things and nobody thought like this. And, and then, Picasso found XYZ and this is how, part of the reason how he was able to escape this, this box that he lived in. And I think that that's the piece is like, you have to really paint the before picture and all of the constraints that are sort of holding this person down in order to show the evolution of them, escaping.
Yeah.
Meredith, any other things that you're thinking about?
Yeah, one thing that stuck out to me when I was reading about how the costume designer approached making everything feel authentic was, yes, she looked at photos, she studied materials, she did all of that. But so like the historical like time period was super important for her, but she wasn't looking to recreate exactly things that people were wearing in photos. What was important more was getting the feel for each character and building something that felt authentic that way. And so I think like when you're thinking about making something feel authentic, it doesn't have to be like a copy of something else. It can be more of like trying to represent a feeling instead. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah,
but that was something I was thinking of.
One of the things that I was thinking about is, do you remember when, like Toms first came out? Yes. And you're like, oh, I can buy this pair of shoes. And it looks cool and people are wearing them and whatever, and it's pretty cheap. And also they're going to send a pair of shoes to someone in need, right? Mm-hmm. And you're like, that's pretty cool. And I was thinking about this with, creating dresses where you're like, hey, I mean, yeah, sure, this dress looks great on my figure, but also I'm helping the war effort. The extra material from this dress is going to the front lines. And I know that it's not like exactly like that.
Yeah.
But I think it does speak to another marketing lesson there where, and it doesn't need to be necessarily like social impact, but the idea of like the story that they tell their friends, right? Like when you showed up, I remember the first time I wore a pair of Toms and my friend was like, what are those silly shoes? And I was like, oh, it's this crazy company actually. Like these are pretty cool shoes. And, they make my heels hurt a little bit by the end of the night, but that's all good. And they're easy to take on and off. And by the way, they send a pair of shoes to people in need for every pair you wear. I don't even know if that was a slogan. I don't it gives you the story so that you can go tell it to other people. Right. And so sort of the idea there, I think is so important that when you do something like that, you give the person the story and then it, sort of weaponizes that story so that they can go, tell it and it can spread. Where it's like, oh, you might be mad that this is how dresses look, but hey, it's war. We're at war, baby. Got to do what you can do. And there's just not enough fabric. So I guess we got to wear different stuff. So anyways, I think that there's some lesson in there about having that extra little story ingrained into the thing that allows you to tell it faster. All right. So zooming out, tell us a little bit about your content strategy.
Yeah, that's a great question, Ian. So when I think of content, right, there are 4 pillars the way I plan my content strategy. The first is discovery, like really identifying the right story, right? Identifying the story that aligns with your business values, with your goals, with your drivers. That is the key. That, hey, first, identify the right story. And second is securing this story, right? You have to go and secure the stories from different customers. So that's my first pillar, that right story. The second is you always want to tell a story that you have to, let me take a step back, really understand who are you telling this story to? Like, who is your audience? Is it going to be an engineer? Is it going to be a non-technical person? Is it going to be an executive? So your story always has to be persona driven. I always say, if you run it all the directions, you're not reaching anywhere, right? So it's very important to know your audience, right? Also, when I work with a customer, I want to tell a very strategic story. And what I mean by strategic story is tell the story from the lenses of a different persona. So that way you're telling a holistic story, right? A case study could be for an engineer, a blog could be for an executive, right? So telling the customer story through different lenses, but still that way you tell a holistic story, but making sure it is still connected. There could be one case study, there could be one blog, there could be one podcast. But at the end of the day, you have to find a narrative to connect those 3 stories, right? So a holistic and a connected story. That's my second pillar. Third is we create all, in a B2B world, right? We create all these customer stories. But what's our end goal? Our end goal is how are my sellers? How are my sales teams? How are my account executives going to leverage this story with other prospects, with other customers, right? So truly thinking that buyer journey, that how are your different stories going to influence every stage in that buyer journey? And the fourth pillar to me is self-service, right? You have to enable, empower your sellers and other parts of your organization to go and look for stories. So again, self-service is also very important. So as I said, discovery, identifying the right stories that align with your business goal, your business drivers, your company's strategic initiatives. Second is persona-driven stories, telling a holistic yet a connected story. Third is making sure the stories that you're pumping out, they influence every stage of the buyer journey. And the fourth is self-service.
I love it. That's so good. How do you think about ROI?
ROI. Oh, there are so many ways you can think about ROI. But to me, as a customer marketer, the ROI is it has to be both measurable and strategic, right? Really impacting key areas such as your revenue growth, your product growth, your customer lifetime value, your brand awareness, and advocacy. So customer marketing truly touches every aspect that I just mentioned, right? So for me, I know I've always been, and I say this in my interviews whenever I've interviewed as well, that business is run by solutions and relationships. And customer marketing is one of the few roles that drive impact in both these aspects. Yep. Second is, you building up pool of your customer advocates, because these folks are going to be champions. They're going to, not only you are amplifying their story, but they are also amplifying your brand, your product value through the different channels, right? The different channels you partner with them on. And finally, through these strategic relationships and these programs, customer marketing directly both impacts and influences your revenue growth and your product growth. So those are the metrics for me: advocacy, growth, and relationships.
Can I say, I think that if you went to the average company, I would say that they probably have like 75% less customer stories than they should have.
Yeah.
And especially in video and especially in short form video. But like, why is that? Why is it just so hard to get them? Is it that we can't tell them in the right way? And then when we do tell them, it's always the exact same format. Hrishi, just explain to me why.
Why is it hard? It is, there's one thing I always say, that customer marketing is a sales arm of marketing. And really, we as marketers are guilty of going to the customer and really pushing them, asking them, hey, can you give me a quote? Can you give me a case study? Can you give me a video? Versus really taking a step back and asking the customer, hey, what are your goals? What are some of your challenges? How can I help you with your marketing goals, with your challenges, with what are you trying to achieve, right? And once you become truly customer-centric, that's when the customer knows, hey, this is no longer a vendor and a customer relation. It is a partnership. So going back to your question, why we don't have enough stories is because I think most average companies lack customer centricity. If you think that the customer has to be the front and center of everything that I do, you're going to get more customer stories. I remember a few years back when I used to work with Salesforce, that's where you and I met. And at Salesforce, our leader had, it was a rule, for lack of a better term, that you cannot pump out a piece of content. You cannot launch a piece of content if there is no customer voice in it. Now, when I say customer voice, it could be a full-fledged customer story. It could be a customer code. It could be a blog byline by the customer. But you need to have some customer voice in it, right? If you're publishing a company video, hey, get a customer to talk in your video, right? Yep. It's really keeping the customer front and center of everything that you do. Having that customer-centric approach will help you produce more customer content.
I love it. Hrishi, tell me one thing that you're working on or excited about right now.
Yeah, as I mentioned, right, I joined DBT Labs back in August of last year, and I'm running your traditional customer marketing, customer advocacy and executive programs, the customer advisory board, product roundtables, customer stories. And I saw an opportunity where we can truly elevate our customer marketing program, partnering with, of course, with different parts of the organization, especially with the leadership team. And I'm really working on this really cool project or initiative. It's not really a project, it's an initiative, which is Executive Sponsorship Program. And what it really means is having that strategic relationship with some of our top accounts, right? That number will keep growing as we as a company keep growing, starting with like a 40 to 50-ish top accounts. And really, as I said, the goal is to strengthen executive alignment, gain a deeper understanding of the customer's business objectives. Because what this program entails is one of our internal executive, will be aligned with an executive on the customer side. It's a one-on-one alignment, right? And really having the strategic discussions, asking deep, getting a deep understanding of their business goals, of their strategy, right? Fostering a stronger relationship with that customer through these engagements, and really further elevating our presence with the C-suite on the customer side. And again, ultimately, the goal is that how can we find the right opportunities to further expand our product, right? To further also to build our product roadmap, right? With customer insights, customers' feedback, the voice of the customer, as I mentioned earlier. So I'm really excited to launch this executive sponsorship program.
What is your best piece of advice that you would give to other marketing leaders?
Oh, it's a lot of advice. I know, I'm just kidding. I think the one piece of advice I would give, be authentic. Being authentic is so important in marketing. That is something we learned from the new look, right?
Yeah.
Like be authentic in what you do. The passion comes across genuinely. It comes across easily. It's very evident. I think that's the right word. Be innovative. Don't be afraid to take risks. I touched on this earlier. Whenever you think of a new project or a new initiative, the question you ask yourself is, how is it going to help my customer? How is it going to help my other team members? Not just my team, but how is it going to help my other stakeholders within the company? And most importantly, how is it going to help my customer? Right? That's customer-centric approach. So be authentic, be innovative, take those calculated risks, and be collaborative. Collaboration is, as a marketer, especially for a customer marketer, having that collaborative mindset is so crucial, because that way, you are not only delivering a seamless and a streamlined experience to the customer, but when you show up to the customer, whether you're a salesperson, whether you're a customer success, or whether you're customer marketing, all of you are speaking the same language. And that really helps build trust with your customer.
Hrishi, wonderful having you on the show. Thanks so much for joining. Great topic, the new look. For our listeners, go check out DBT Labs. Any final thoughts? Anything to plug?
No, thank you for the opportunity, Ian and Meredith. I really enjoyed chatting with both of you. I hope you did too. And I'm excited to see the final product.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Take care.
Thank you. Take care, guys.
Well, that's it for today. I hope you got some good ideas for your B2B content. Thank you for listening to Remarkable. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. Remarkable is created by the team at Caspian Studios, B2B podcast as a service. Caspian also creates fiction series for B2B companies, so if you want a business thriller, you can learn more at caspianstudios.com. Hollywood-style storytelling for B2B. And in today's episode, you heard from myself, Ian Faison, and Meredith O'Neill, senior producer here at Caspian Studios. Remarkable was produced this week by Meredith O'Neill, mixed by Scott Goodrich, and our theme song is Solomon by Falak. Be remarkable and rise above the noise.